I'm trying to figure out how to say I got it without exiting my presentation here. There, okay, good. Thank you, Michaela. And to all of you, welcome to our encore presentation on premiumization. Didier and I gave this presentation last December, and a lot has changed since then. For the topic of premiumization has become even more important for many organizations. Here's a quote from the recent New York Times article. Premiumization creates opportunities and revenue growth, and it grows margin expansion, and more importantly, it delights our end users. From the CEO of WD-40 of all things, a common lubricant, but you saw in the previous slide what they've done with it. They made it so that when you flip it up, it sprays on through the nozzle. You flip it down, you get a wide spray. They're able to get a premium out of that. And this is very important for them and for many other businesses today. So the article outlined how so much of our economy is going premium and its importance for the long-term survival of many organizations and many businesses. And that is why today's class is so important for people who serve on boards, because it's the long-term survival of the organizations for which you are serving is on the line. Because the consumers are shifting, the landscape is shifting dramatically on us, and boards need to be responding to that. So that's why we're presenting to you today. At the end of the hour, our aim is to provide you, the board member, with 4 areas of understanding. You should have an understanding for the need for and the value of a premium plan for the businesses and why boards should be monitoring this. We'll touch a little bit on the importance for nonprofits, why this is important for investors, and then planning for the next steps for seizing the opportunity, as well as the risks you should be considering along the way. So as we continue on with this, I would like to allow the opportunity to introduce my co-presenters in presenting this class. When Didier and I offered this class last December, Nadiia asked a very important and challenging question. Can the principles of premiumization be applied to the online and IT worlds where Nadiia practices her expertise routinely? We didn't have a really good answer for her. So when we were looking at offering this class again, we naturally asked Nadiia, hey, do you want to come join us in exploring this and addressing this issue? And Nadiia has been such a wonderful partner in this, for she's really elevated our understanding of what is premiumization and other ways to apply it. Nadiia is a native of Ukraine, currently living in London, and has been spending the last couple decades exercising her expertise in IT implementation and serves on a number of boards, as well as having her own consulting practice in the area. And just a word of assurance, if you ask a question, that does not mean you're going to get strong-armed by the 3 of us into the next presentation. My only thing that I always remind my students is the only dumb question is the one that's not asked. So we're going to be welcoming all your questions at the end. Now, Didier is a veteran of the premium and luxury worlds. He's worked with the cosmetics and car industries, and he's worked with the likes of Yves Saint Laurent, Estee Lauder, and BMW. Geographically, he has deep expertise in India and the Middle East. And for the past 12 years, his own practice has been applying his knowledge to clients and to help them elevate their engagement in the beauty and premium industries. He serves on the board of a French retailer and lives in the south of France. And Didier will be sharing with us some case studies for how premiumization has been applied to the consumer electronics industries. As for me, earlier in my career, I served as the primary administrator of the Manufacturing Management program at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. While there, we educated many of the future leaders of the top manufacturing firms in the world. But along the way, while I was working there, the president of Vera Wang came to campus. Now, she was Calvin Klein's third employee, and she told the wonderful world of her career in the world of fashion. After hearing her presentation, I made the connection that the world of fashion is usually 2 to 3 years ahead of most other consumer products industries. And so I offered to the university to introduce a course on fashion and luxury. And that's what I taught at Northwestern for 10 years at both the Kellogg School of Management and the Fine Arts School. After that, I went on to the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business and taught luxury there. And my practice is really applying what I was teaching there. And over the last decade, we've done things like launching a all-American leather goods line at Harrods in London, and we also worked with the Japanese author Marie Kondo in launching her when she came to the United States. So more recently, my friends in the manufacturing world, this is over the last couple of years, have been reflecting that their world is changing rapidly. As the New York Times article pointed out to us, there's been a rapid rise of prices in 2022, and many are looking at how they're going to either maintain those prices or bring them back down again. So if they can maintain those prices and maintain those increased margins. So what we are seeing in the economy as a whole is that it's shifting with two essential markets emerging, the basic and the premium. And we are seeing this in all sorts of industries, from donuts to lubricants to automobiles. And as we are shifting, this is changing the availability of products, with many lower priced options disappearing. So many are not happy about this. In fact, when I looked at the comments section in that New York Times article, about 80% of the comments were negative, with many were expressing great dismay that so many of the products that they were relying on are disappearing, and they did not like the way the economy was shifting. So this is one of the risks that we have to think about as board members for where our product is going to fit into this changing landscape. We're also seeing the shift to premium in the world of museums. This has been happening for a few years, but has become even more pronounced as museums are returning to more full opening. Many are continuing to have timed entry, and they're charging a premium price for special blockbuster exhibits. Food service at the museums also changed dramatically. Many of them have gone upscale. Gone are the days of the simple sandwich in the cafeteria line. Now it's very common to have a Michelin-starred restaurant offering the food at a museum. But the shift is also a generational one. Last year, over the holidays, I took a walk with my 20-year-old goddaughter and 18-year-old godson. They're definitely Gen Z. As we were talking, they both kept naming fashion brands that I'd never even heard of. And I taught fashion for a decade at Northwestern. What in the heck is going on here? So it turns out that this is pretty common for their generation. The consumption and knowledge of luxury is very important for them. It's just part of their DNA. Quartz Magazine did a nice overview of this last November when they outlining just how indoctrinated both the millennials and Gen Z are in luxury. And this has been something done through brand expansion and brand democratization efforts in the past two decades, a process that many on this call may have been intimately engaged with. So according to BCG, by 2025, just in 2 years from now, Gen Z and the millennials will be representing 70% of luxury consumption. That means that those same highly educated consumers will be expecting more from all of their purchases, adding to the increased importance of premium offerings. So that's, again, why you as a board member need to be paying close attention to this now. And what is absolutely clear is that in 2023, we are at a Y in the road. Every organization is going to need to make an assessment for how they fit with this new changing landscape. And it might be that you do nothing, but you have to at least spend the time to look at it because things are shifting so dramatically. And so it's vital for you to be addressing this. And at this point, I think it's important to spend just a moment to distinguish between luxury and premium, for they operate and are generated in very different manners. I refer to luxury as big luxury, essentially run by three large conglomerates. 20 years ago, what we considered luxury brands, such as Gucci, Valentino, Bottega Veneta, or Chanel, they would have all been privately held, family-run businesses. And those businesses were super passionate about what the work that they were doing, and they created exquisite products. They were not applying any sort of production maximization. They were simply producing the best they could because that's what the market was responding to. I've talked to some shop owners who were operating in the early 2000s. They told me it was routine that they would fax their orders to these houses and then receive a fax back with confirmation. So that was the level of IT and of maximization that they were engaged with. But eventually, the founder of the family would decide to retire or sell the brand. And investors came in, and what they found was these companies had unparalleled margins, typically around 75%. Why such a high margin? Because these are such emotional purchases. And through a series of consolidations, the industry over the past 2 decades has essentially become controlled by three conglomerates: Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, Richemont, and Kering. With just a few smaller holdouts left in the continuing to operate. But in order for those big conglomerates to receive the returns that they paid such an exorbitant price for these brands, they had to start expanding market share. So how did they do that? They did it through fragrances, through other partnerships, eyeglasses, and brand extensions. But really what they did is they democratized luxury. It's a process that Bernard Arnault, the head of LVMH, this is a term that he really coined back in the mid-2000s, that they were out to democratize luxury, and they've done phenomenally well at that. That's why my godchildren are so well versed in luxury. And it's also why they choose as the new creative director for Louis Vuitton, not even a fashion designer, but a DJ. So it's really about spreading luxury to the wider market. But really the spread of luxury in the way that luxury ideas is spread is a more of a trickle-down effect. And that's different from what we're going to be talking about for premiumization. So allow me to provide just a little bit of an academic background about premiumization. So back in the early 2000s, while the luxury brands were being gobbled up, Silverstein and Fisk came out with this HBR article in 2003, Luxury for the Masses, which outlined how luxury was spreading to the masses and explained how this can happen. And it gave rise to this concept of mastige. And later it gave us the book Trading Up. A year later, Selling to the Moneyed Masses by Nunes, Johnson, and Green, they showed that a lot of commonplace brands were trading up. So they gave the examples of P&G's, White Strips, Spin Brush toothbrushes, Swiffers, Kraft gave us DiGiorno pizzas, and like the fast lane at Disney were some examples they gave. And they were all ways to sell new higher priced items to a mass market. Keep in mind, these articles were written 2 decades ago. The principles they instilled have been adopted by many, but that's no longer going to give you a competitive advantage. As the former Kellogg Dean Don Jacobs reflected, management concepts have a half-life, and we've well past the half-life on those. So right now it's a time for a new way of looking at premiumization. And today's marketplace is also quite different. And it's especially compared to what we had is even as late as 2019. The peak pandemic years brought a further widening of the economy with even greater distance between economic haves and have-nots. Especially in the United States, many of the wealthy amassed extra savings and now have the desire and the capacity to spend like they were not able to even 3 or 4 years ago. Concurrently, over the last year, we saw such dramatic increase in inflation, dramatic in price inflation among all categories. So now firms are faced with the choice of whether to return to lower prices or to maintain those higher prices. But in order to maintain those higher prices, they have to give extra value to maintain that. And that's why this is important for you as the board member. On the other end of the marketplace, more consumers are looking for lower prices. It's no coincidence that the dollar stores are the fastest growing retailers in the United States, and they are quite profitable. Dollar General reported 10% profit increase just in Q4 of 2022, while their competitor Dollar Tree reported an overall increase for 2022 of 23% in profit increase. So the combination of all these factors has led to a vastly different marketplace in 2023. And that's why it's important for the board member to acknowledge the shift in consumption and preferences and formulate a plan to addressing the premiumization of the economy. Allow me to be very clear. I'm not saying that for every firm, they must come up with a plan to premiumize. For some firms, it might not be the right plan at all. Certainly, some firms have premiumized and lost customer support in the process, for their base customer is just not ready to go there. For example, in the New York Times article, they pointed to Six Flags theme park, which raised prices and they moved away from discounts. Premium is not what their customer base was looking for, with attendance and spending decreasing and profits dropping by 10%. But in 2023, with the dramatically shifting consumer landscape, addressing premiumization needs to be the top of every board's agenda, as well as for public-facing cultural institutions. It's the board's responsibility to challenge the brand position and the brand experience. And to provide you a better understanding for what we are talking about in premiumization, I'm now going to turn it over to Didier, who's going to provide us some case examples for how, from the worlds of beauty, automobiles, spirits, and consumer electronics. So Didier, we turn it over to you, and you just tell me when you want me to punch next.
Okay, cool. Thanks for setting the stage, Stephen. In fact, before I move to the entertainment part, which is going to be a lot of pictures and visuals, just to put things in perspective, could you push the next slide, Stephen, where you have the title? Excellent, yeah. So I'm going to start by, in fact, there is just to bring things in perspective. I'm sure everyone who's attended a marketing class in the past 50 years has heard about Michael Porter. And the guy was basically explaining that there are, in fact, two ways to compete. One is about playing with cost. And this is what Stephen has illustrated with several examples. Or the other option is to differentiate, and there are many different dimensions. And in fact, what we're trying to say here is that premiumization is just one type of differentiation. There are several others. But what's interesting and what has actually been researched in the past, in the more recent times, I would say a couple of years, is that differentiation is actually down to 4 and only 4 different aspects. One is about the functionality, and I'm not going to expand too much on that because Stephen's going to come back and frame it much better than I will. But just so you understand, the first one is about the functionalities of the product. So you differentiate by adding, as Stephen showed, a cap on the WD-40 bottle. So that's one type of differentiation. The 3 others are a bit more tricky, and actually I find much more subtle. The second one is about it's about playing with values, and the one value that's actually quite useful is all the emotional values, so everything that's related to fun, pleasure, excitement, etc. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that. Another type and the third way of differentiating is playing with symbolic values. And by symbolic values, I mean everything that's related to social recognition. And again, I'm going to illustrate that in a minute. And the last direction is actually about ethical values. So just making sure you do anything or you feel as you're contributing to something that's a bit more altruistic, I would say. So this is really what I want to do now is give you a couple of examples. So if you want to move to the next slide. In fact, I'm going to start from the world of no name, just to show that it's not about branding already. And if you think about the situation of food today, you see that brands have actually been fighting with no name, or if you want, private labels in certain categories. And it's very clear that because the quality is not that differentiated anymore, the consumers and we are not stupid. We are going where the value is, and there was less and less value in paying a high price to a Heinz ketchup when you've got every retailer basically provides his own. So yes, it's not as not as good, but it's good enough, and people will go for that. So if we think that if we think about the customer trying to, do you want to move to the next slide, Stephen, please? Even if you're in the branded world, and I took this example, if we think that the customer is going to go into the subtleties, I spend a lot of time trying to understand the different elements that we're trying to push in marketing, you reach to the target. But in reality, very few people are willing to go into that kind of detail. So my point here is to say that product differentiation, of course, is critical, but this is not where you're going to catch your customer. Next. What I wanted to show you is that here are two Colgate ads, and I think they're quite interesting in the sense that they're both pushing a Colgate product, but there are different aspects and they're playing with different values. Obviously, the one on the left is playing more on the health, on the fact that you want to take care of your mouth and have a pleasant own feeling. The one on the right is clearly playing on the perception people have of yourself, and indirectly, when we're talking, it's about seduction. So that's really just an example, simply on a toothpaste. So that gives you an idea of how far you can go. Next. Research has gone even a step further in the sense that from the three aspects that are values, emotional, the symbolic, and the ethical that I've mentioned earlier, you have in fact six different paths to premium. And you can play, and I'm not going to go through that, but you can play with offering something that's either safer, more innovative, providing a better experience, being easier to use, in boosting your social image, or being more exclusive. And everything I'm going to show you from now on are pictures, because I just want you to you know this. This is not a marketing class, but the link is showing you that marketing, in fact, should be part and should be present, and definitely much more in the boardroom than it is today. Next. So obviously, coming from BMW, I could not show you that. And a car, and we had a conversation just prior to this meeting. A car can be seen by some people as a way to move from A to B. It can also be seen by some people as a source of great pleasure and joy. It can be seen as a status, of course, and it can be even seen as an element of power. And this is clearly what BMW are trying to convey here: a mix of pleasure and power. Next. well, Volvo have played exactly the opposite. I mean, not the opposite, but a different route, I should say. Here, what they're trying to sell you, and it's been like this for years, it's safe. And on the left-hand side, you've got a campaign where they were trying to become even a bit more fashionable. So playing with the codes of fashion just to sell you safety, talking clearly to women, obviously. Whereas the one on the right is strongly and clearly playing on the safe. Next, please. The industry I'm coming from, and I apologize for those who are going to be shocked with these pictures. Clearly, the beauty industry, whether it's fragrance, makeup, skincare, hair care, you name it, they're selling you seduction. Well, I should say sex, as a matter of fact. If you're talking to the guys, the Tom Ford, it's a bit old now. It's definitely something you wouldn't be able to do. But this is an ad that was done in the mid 2012, 2015, I think, something like this. This was clearly the message that was passed at the time. Further down, Dolce & Gabbana, this is much more recent. They're playing about exclusivity, so race, gender, age, etc. L'Oreal, which is not a mass luxury or a premium brand, I should say, are playing exactly on the same levels. Next, please. You see more recent tentative, the one from L'Oreal, where they're now playing about social values, equal rights, telling guys that, you know what, you should hire women in your boards and in your companies. They actually deliver better results. And that's completely, isn't that funny to link a lipstick to that kind of value? I'll let you interpret that, ladies. The one on the right is a totally different thing. It's about being honest and transparent. Enough bullshit, no frill. I am individual. I am what I am, and I stand for that value. And again, that's you're playing to something that clearly has nothing to do with the what is it, the day cream or whatever, and no mention of price, of course, right? Carry on, Stephen. The beverage industry is playing exactly about the same thing. So I've put together here a couple of examples. The one on the left is actually playing very obviously on the scarcity, the exclusivity. The one below, the beer, is playing on the innovation, the modernism, the fact that the company decided to install some renewable, or actually build I guess it's photovoltaic panels, whatever, and that they're producing. So they're clean, by the way. They're building about the ethics here. And that's how you bridge that to a beer. The one on the right is more about fun, about precious moments, timeliness, close friendships, and trust. Trust. It's all about that. Next. The other point I wanted to make before I leave you back to Nadiia and Stephen is that, yes, premiumization is about growing sales, and it's, as you can imagine, like a lot of things in marketing, it's very often very difficult to build the link between what you're doing and the results you're getting. And I wanted to take the example of the consumer industry, the consumer good industry, and the durable sector. And I wanted to show you a couple of examples simply because we have a case here compiled by GfK where they show the impact of premiumization on some results. Next. So the first one, same story as before. Now we're trying to sell you a fridge. Obviously, we don't want to sell you a fridge. We're selling you innovation, cutting edge, advanced technology, even part of the family. You know, now we're going into social. If you move to the next one, you see it's not a TV we're selling you. It's a complete experience. It's aesthetic. It's art. It's yeah, the experience, the immersion, the true immersion. But now look at this next slide, and then you see that after the growth, to put things in perspective, the data goes back to 21, but there's a reason. The industry, the consumer technology and durable product industry experienced a lot of growth during the COVID. And after the COVID, obviously, it did, and they faced actually a downturn. What was interesting is that, and goes back to what Stephen was explaining, we see a clear polarization of the market. Now, if you look at the chart on the left, where you see the total market, you clearly see that the growth, and this is growth rate we're showing here, you see that the growth was actually partly taken by the mass and the price-driven propositions, and actually, and this was the best performers were actually those who produced who provided premium propositions. And obviously, then you have different categories: consumer electronics, IT, major domestic appliance or small domestic appliance, and obviously telco. But you see that clearly across the board. The one thing you don't want to be, and that's true all the time, is you don't want to be in the middle. I call that the sandwich syndrome. You want to be the bread, but clearly the premium bread is actually the one that delivers the best. So that's further ado. I think I'm going to pass that back to Stephen. But I hope I gave you a bit of a picture of what's happening in the goods industry.
Thank you, Didier. So what we are seeing from what you shared is that there are 6 paths to offering the premium: something safer, more innovative, offering a better experience, easier, increased social image, or even more exclusive. As someone who's been driving Volvos for the past 3 decades, and whose life has most likely been saved by one, I especially appreciate that analogy. And Didier, you've been wonderful to work with, for you've brought so much to this presentation. You've brought to our attention so many helpful frameworks. One is from 2 academics, Anna Karina Schmitz and Martin Fastnacht at Germany's WHU Otto Bischheim School of Management, who in 2020 released a helpful framework for considering premiumization. They point out that premiumization is done right, or when it's done right, it brings great benefits, but it also has great risks, as we've already alluded to earlier. It requires a strategic and systematic approach. The board needs to weigh the benefits against the costs and risks. Going the premiumization route is not inexpensive or simple. It's going to require realignment of functions and culture and the building of whole new competencies. Adding value and achieving higher price points will require positioning and arrangements of the current value and price elements so that the brand achieves the desired shift in position in the mind of the consumer. Because it requires not only a change in price, but a corresponding change in value. How do we deliver that extra value? Didier talked on some of these already. So functional, improving the basic performance of the product. The emotional, giving some kind of pleasure and excitement. Those worlds of fragrances, that's all about pleasure. Symbolic, giving social recognition, that's the world of handbags, the automobile, or it could be a parka with the right logo on the side. Or it could be on the ethical side, doing something altruistic. So like from the world of Patagonia, when Yvon Chouinard, when he announced last year that he was going to give his all the wealth that he'd amassed in creating Patagonia, he's just going to give it away to environmentally friendly organizations. The sales of Patagonia products skyrocketed after that because people really responded to that ethical message. So and paths that they, I'm going to just skim over this. We can come back to it in the discussion, just in the interest of time. But you can keep it at the same price point where it's a slight shift. You can bring it to a higher position, but the value has to be very clear. You can add a new line. It really needs to be within in what the brand already exists. Limited editions, mass customization. You can co-brand, create a new brand, or buy one. And sometimes the last option is the best one given all things considered, because it's very complex, this process. I don't want to at all say that this is something simple. So Nadiia, when you so we've laid out the case for why a board needs to be thinking about this. But this right now, I think, is a good chance to now turn it over to Nadiia, who can walk through with us how on earth you apply this in the IT and services sector. We gave you a real challenge, and Nadiia, we're looking forward to hearing your insights.
Thank you, Steven. Thank you, Didier. Thank you to everybody who's with us. Steven, do you plan to show the slides, or I will show? Yeah, thank you very much. So a couple of words from my side. First of all, I would like to say that when we work together, and we work very intensively, I would like to say, a lot of discussions, thanks for that cooperation, guys. But actually, what we would like to pay your attention, and why we would like to attract your attention regarding that topic, it was exactly about coming back customer into the boardroom, because we think that we're too much in discussion regarding the risk, compliance, audit, everything like that, but except our customers. And unfortunately, the world is changing so quickly, so rapidly, so unexpectedly, that actually do not pay attention on customers. That's a big risk when we just can lose the market, what we have today. And regarding that, because I'm a specialist in the digital transformation, and I saw a lot of companies who just do not meet correctly, the old challenges and barriers which is coming with the digital world, I would like to move a little bit into my experience and to share with you premiumization in services. First of all, since you do not have something material that affect your sense of touch, the only thing you can work with, except for the ratio, is a sense of belonging to something special. But if you cannot physically feel this feature, you do not have encounters of the special hangouts, then the only thing left is decision-making based on rationality. That's actually service. And so for the premium in services is one of that gives me the best feature for the best value. Now, best for whom? Is it management? Is it board, shareholders, or we just pay a lot of attention to competitors, or it is for our client? Of course, we're talking about customer experience. So IT word and service word, that's everything about customer-centric. Let's investigate some examples. Can we move a little bit next slide? Yeah. So first of all, from my point of view, there are 4 approaches, and currently in our chat, we have also a question about differentiation. Yes, you are right. Premiumization, that's an approach in differentiation. But premiumization, there are like 4, I think, approaches in the service market. First of all, the most famous probably, that's a freemium model. Freemium model, it is very traditional, and probably you saw the book Freemium Economics. That's actually about a lot of software product approach. And for customer acquisition, that's a really great model, because you can start not from the ready-made product, but from MVP or prototype, and together with your client, finalize your product, and then to set up the price which you expect. But the point here is knowing your customer and knowing the data about your customer, correctly and properly collect that data. So successful implementation of that model, of course, that's inside of the meaning, building analysis about the product design and about the customer steps and about all stages of the development of that product. So it means that some companies who doesn't have a great approach and great knowledge and specialist in that area, they take a little bit easier approach, which named premium offer. So premium offer, we will discuss it a little bit later on an example, but actually there is a packages of different kind of values which you can evaluate as the valuable for your customers. And in that case, customer can pay step by step as the ledger level pricing. Third model, that's very much connecting to offline or face-to-face experience. So usually you can build loyalty clubs or some kind of be the part or member of something. But in that case, of course, very important that you have some time meetings of that community which you are belonging to. And the last strategy, that's about avoid commoditization. That's especially big strategy and big challenge for networking companies who is building the network, who is the base for infrastructure. And in that case, actually, they are the biggest, they have a biggest threat to be disrupted by other non-traditional industries. Can we go further? Yeah. Freemium model, some examples you probably, it's very famous and knowing by you, I guess, that's Slack, Spotify, Canva, Dropbox, Zoom. All of them, as you can see, that's purely digital companies. And of course, they have a great experience and great knowledge in data. So that's why if you would like to go to in that way and in that strategy, you need to know that your competence has to be around the customer data management and about the data mining and everything about control customer experience through data. Next, please. Second example, that's the freemium offer. Usually it looks like that proposal, and we also have some recommendation to our customers based on the majority of orders what we have. And in that case, of course, that's a very famous examples like a Salesforce, it's also Microsoft, HubSpot, and others. Next, please. Loyalty Club, I can share how to differentiate them on two parts. So one part, it's very costly one. That's loyalty clubs with the face-to-face service like boutique approach. For example, it could be the pet care, especially for you, like especially for your type of pets, or it could be like a family butcher. So when you know the butcher and he usually prepare for you very fresh meat and you don't know even price for that. It's individual taxi or individual tailor who is doing especially for you. He knows your measurement and he usually or she prepare to you what exactly you need. But the problem of that model is that we know that person, but he or she must be available all time, majority of time, because I could have that need, whatever, probably something happened with my pet. And in that case, for the building any kind of forecasting for that model, it's quite, you can do it only in very niche market. If you're talking about IT, so IT thought about that in any case, IT, it's about the scalability. Yeah, that's why it's about the second slide. So loyalty club in IT, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, that's about finding the niche, but quite wide niche. For example, if previously we talk about the tailoring some kind of dress, in case of providing the tailoring dress, but in digital world, you can do that kind of company named Dress X, where you can order online based on the measurement which you send online, you know, your personalized individual order and a very quality kind of dress or suit or anything like that. Second brand, very interesting, UVU. That's actually the individual taxi for moms or children. So I can trust to the taxi that they will deliver, you know, children back and forth without any risk. And usually the women are driving that type of car. Black Line, that's a special Uber for the very expensive customers, so who need really premium model cars. And but in any case, I use the same you know, application as Uber. And Credit Things, this is a digital bank which provides you 24/7 experience. So the core point here is that even if I feel myself that I'm the member of certain club, so still using digital experience, so I have access 24/7. And of course, in that case, individual approach for even for B2B customer or for wholesale also could be applicable. Big point, what I would like to talk, that's last model. That's a fight with the disruption in the traditional industry. And actually, digital, it's about the internal process simplification. So if we are talking about digital transformation for that type of company like telco, the core point is that what kind of new model has to be in that companies to avoid that commoditization, which is driving by the development of the technology. Can we go to next slide? Okay, there is no because
I think in the thank you, Nadiia. Thank you.
No,
so
just
much.
Stephen, sorry, I just would like to talk about the telco couple of points because the core point regarding telecommunication as example, it was that as the 5G technology transform industry, so telco's ability to maximize the opportunity will depend on transforming themselves from network provider to outcome provider was the new approach to monetization. But telco clearly they are very exciting on that. So the 5G really provide a really great new customer experience, and they expect, okay, what else we need to do if we just invest so much money, like for example in overall evaluation by McKinsey, 5G infrastructure will cost approximately $600 billion between 2022 to 2025 for investment point of view. But despite this substantial infrastructure investment, the adoption and monetization of 5G are still in the infancy level. And getting 5G right is not just about recapping investment. It required capturing value, and that's about premiumization from a new phase of innovation across whole industry. And operator have a choice. They have relegates themselves to a minor role as just a kind of traditional unfolds, or they can try to reposition themselves as 5G business builder that serves critical partner to organizations seeking like a next generation or 5G enable use cases such as, for example, automobile manufacturing, autonomous vehicle, twins, and others. So like everything providing through data. So it means that what I just would like to say that to adopt, telco operator will need to shift their mindset and business approach without board engagement. It is simply impossible. Is it in the current board agenda? If the company have been started its path in digital transformation, has the risk committee create a separate part in the risk list, possible strategic shift, pivot in customer experience, premiumization, and the target audience because of it? I'm not sure. And that's actually what we met when we started the digital transformation path. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadiia. And you've done a really wonderful job of exposing us to how premiumization can be applied to the online and services world. So thank you for these insights. I have a few other slides here, but in the interest of time, we're running a little longer than we had originally anticipated. So at this point, I can talk about these later, but I'd like to open it up to questions. I'll ask the VAB sponsors to provide us some kind of based on this.
I can jump in here. So we've had a couple of comments and questions in the chat. John, I think that yours was first there. Do you want to jump in and share that?
Sure. I mean, I think, and this goes back to when you were talking about the three dominant companies in the luxury market, and you're walking around with your daughters and brands that you had never heard of. So we work in the luxury market with our Insights platform, and what we've been looking at is companies that we would define as accessible luxury or aspirational products, which seem to bring in a lot of these new companies that are targeting Gen Z and millennials. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on the expansion of what we might call luxury or premium products and those types of different terms that companies like ours are using.
I would say it does get a little bit gray between the markets. However, those aspirational luxury is distinct from premium, because for premium brands, they are the WD-40s, for example. They're upgrading WD-40. They're not really offering something that would be just below what a luxury offering would be. So that's how I would distinguish it.
Can I comment on WD-40? Because, and the question there is it really legitimate to say that they are premiumizing their product? What's in the can is the same thing that was before. They might be adding a straw, but that's been in there before. So they redesigned the package and raised the price. I mean, how long can that last before the consumer catches on?
How long can it last until it becomes commoditized would be my response. Because all the other, I'm sure there's all kinds of IP around that swivel and that nozzle design, but eventually this becomes standardized. A lot of other brands, but very much that how do you maintain the premium level? So that means every year you have to be paying attention to this.
Stephen, would you allow me
Yeah.
to comment to John's?
That'd be wonderful.
John, what I find fascinating as I progress in this industry over the past 30 years now, is that when you see the millennial and you ask today the Gen Z what they call premium and what they call luxury, has nothing to do with what you and I call premium and luxury. So I'm getting to the point where I'm even asking myself whether it makes sense to put them in one bag or the other. And by the same token, if when I started in this industry in the 90s, Vuitton was inaccessible, luxury. And today you still see queues of people in front of the Vuitton stores, but who is queuing? It's actually the aspired, the emerging, and no disrespect in my mind, of course, but the emerging market clients, those who actually are becoming richer today, are queuing. You see, and my thought here is that luxury for me, let's say as a Frenchman in the luxury industry, luxury to me is not something that's branded anymore. It's probably that little fashion designer in the middle of nowhere that does 3 dresses a year, and that might be. So I'm not sure it's actually segmenting is actually that relevant.
I think that's right. Just to share a very quick anecdote, I sat in on a focus group of millennials and Gen Z consumers, and they were asked, how do you evaluate a wine brand? Not a single one of them mentioned the price, the taste, the grapes. What they wanted to know is, does the company give back to the community? Does the company follow sustainability? Does the company treat its employees fair? So it was all about values versus value.
True, but sorry to come back to that. I was yesterday in London meeting actually people in the beauty industry, and on top of what everything you quoted, it's that it has to be authentic. If you quote as bullshitting, you're dead.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Very good points. Very interesting. Thank you, John. Richard, I believe you also had a comment there. Would you like to jump in and share your thoughts?
Yes, sure. Sorry, that's my bird that's flying around here. I was having an experience by embedding the premiumization into, let's call it, consumer megatrends. And consumer megatrends in the past years have been things like wellness and health. Value for money is another consumer trend, mega consumer trend. And we do see the possibility ultimately to both functionally and emotionally drive product differentiation into those consumer trends. Now I'm highlighting them because I found them extremely actionable, because you can define product and brand expressions that are exactly tailored to those trends and therefore drive an increasing market share. And the other question that I'd have, companies are often forced into premiumization to uplift margins as the overall market shrinks. And that has been a great driver in the past. Can you comment on that, please, as well? Because I think when we look at the change in online and offline market, there are quite the developments happening. Thank you.
You're touching on a very excellent point here. And that is that a lot of firms may see this as this great opportunity, and they'll jump into premiumizing without taking a moment to really understand who their consumer is and understand whether their consumer is really going to go there with them or not. Because their consumer may be the one who's going to the dollar store instead. And that's where they want to see their products instead. So that's really where the board needs to come in and question management, because of course management wants to give you these results of, look how much we've increased margins, look how much we've increased profits. But it's vital at that point to really understand where your consumer is and where your new consumer might be. Does that help?
Yes, on the second question, I mean, if you look at the dollar store example or other trends, especially in the food industry, is that discounters are thriving over the last couple of years versus full stack stores. So that's one end of the growth. The other end of the growth is online services, delivery services.
Yes.
And the consumer decision is very, very different in both channels.
Yes.
Especially if you go online, it's a very rational decision. All the brands that are relying on impulse are certainly much more challenged with the premium positioning in that environment than in the how to say, luxury shopping of a full stack retailer.
Yes.
Can I just add one point regarding digital? That in additional, yeah, you're right regarding rational. Just one more point. It's about the attracting the attention. So the digital is winner when you are on the top of attracting attention and pushing consumer to make a quick decision. So it means that my target is to limit your decision time and to limit your choose between which you are plan to make a decision. So that's the can be a little bit like emotional or not so rational approach, which digital try to use when they do premium services. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your answers. And Richard, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Oh, there's lots to discuss and to add. I don't want to be the only one driving the discussion here.
We are just about, well, we are actually just at the hour now, but I can see that Stephen has put his and Nadiia and Didier's email addresses in here so that we can continue the discussion after the call. And I've noticed a lot of people putting their LinkedIn profiles into the chat as well. So hopefully everyone is able to connect on LinkedIn. And I'm sure there's going to be some interesting discussions to follow. Were there any other questions before we do wrap up the session today?
If there aren't, I'd like to make one observation here. That before going into this, I thought I knew something about the topic. But it was working with Nadiia and Didier that my knowledge was really challenged and it became much wider. And so I'm very much indebted to both Nadiia and Didier for what they brought to this. And I would expand to say that that really seems to be the power of the Virtual Advisor Board. We've never met in person, but we were able to do this through the VAB. So to VAB, thank you for this opportunity. And we'd love to continue the discussion if anyone wants to. So thank you.
Can I just, if I may, just add one word to what you, Stephen, said. VAB, we looked at your organization and we recognized your efforts to premiumize it. We do realize that.
Thank you.
We decided not to touch. Yeah, thank you.
We decided not to put VAB in the service example that Nadiia covered, but we're not.
Maybe we'll have a feature next time. Thank you all so much, and truly grateful for you to sharing your knowledge and for prompting this discussion today. It's been really interesting to listen to and to hear the comments and the thoughts being shared. And yeah, I wish that I was also able to be a part of all the conversations that I'm sure will carry on from the session. But just to say thank you so much on behalf of VAB. We are very grateful for you, like I said, sharing your knowledge and experience. And I hope that maybe we'll have the chance to have another session like this again soon. We'll definitely have to discuss. And thank you everyone as well for being here. I can no longer see everyone's faces because I've pinned everyone and I don't know how to unpin and bring it back. But thank you all so much for joining the session today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Stephen. Thank you, Nadiia. Thank you, Didier.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
This
Have a
guys.
great evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.